Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fifth installment of our Distortion Series that is organized by the Master Media Design Program here at Geneva. And this year we decided to, explore the concept of the metaverse in a critical and speculative way, really thinking about it in the context of where we are here at Geneva of a school of art and design. And we wanted really to show throughout this afternoon and throughout various talks that actually alternative exists and have existed for a long time. And we also wanted to propose alternative to the dominant commercial ambitions when it comes to thinking about metaverses. And for that, we're going to investigate several axes. The first part will be about the history of metaverse, the origin and the different attempts through the last decades. This will be with Nicolas Nova, the first talk. And then the second part of the afternoon will be more about presenting virtual universes that are conceived by artists and designers, try to extend the definition of a metaverse towards new narrative. This will be with the collective Keiken and also with Danielle Brathwaite-Shirley. And at the end of the afternoon, we will talk about more like issues related to the design and production of this environment. This will be with Christian Loclair, Appia Studio, Sabrina Calvo, and Marie Domanger. And throughout the afternoon, we will be with some students from media design. Thank you for being here. And before starting, I would like to thank Nicolas Nova, Nicolas Baldron, and Cyrus Calatbari for their help putting together this event. And also to thank Timothée Serre, Hugo Langlade, and Pauline Baltinetti and Thibaut Goiffin for creating the visual identity and the website for this event. So I'm really happy to open this conference with Nicolas Nova, professor and researcher here at Geneva, and Maëlys Dotefeld. She will be moderating the question after the talk. And on to you, Nicolas. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alexia, for the introduction, and hi, everyone. So it's exactly the moment where things are not working with the screen sharing, so I have to somehow reshare the screen. Sorry, there's always a bug with Zoom. All right. So the idea of my rather short presentation is to give you some kind of overview of this notion of metaverse and go back to, some principles about its origin and try to, unpack all the fantasies and problems that this technology had in the last, I would say, 50 years or so. So of course, it's not, it's a rather short talk, it's a 20 minutes presentation, but I want to point some issues and some opportunities of this technology, and perhaps that will be helpful for understanding the coming speakers afterwards. So in general, when people talk about history of technology, and you for instance, if you Google metaverse plus technology and plus timeline, you end up with this kind of diagram, very cluttered, brand-oriented perspective about the metaverse. And it's I would not define history as this kind of graphic, but this diagram is interesting because for a lot of people, things start in the 21st century, and most of the history is about brands, which is only a limited portion of what history of metaverse could be. And as a person, as an anthropologist of technology, interested in the evolution of those platforms and technologies, that is not satisfying because it's only a limited perspective on the metaverse. And one way to approach that, probably with a more thoughtful perspective, would be to think about certain characteristics of the metaverse that you can trace back to a certain moment in the past. It's a kind of approach that I'm used to working with, not in the context of metaverses, but in context of game controllers, game peripheral evolution. This is a project that I've done with my colleague Laurent Bolly in the past about the history of interfaces in video games. And what we try to do in that project is to try to uncover the circulation of certain patterns, certain technologies and certain interfaces game controllers, joypad, joysticks, etc., etc. So I won't be doing exactly that with metaverses, but I want to try. And in order to do that, I went straight back to the term metaverse that appeared in the science fiction book Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson in 1992, like 30 years ago. So what you have here on the screen is a selection of different excerpts from this science fiction book that covers the definition of what the metaverse is. And I think it's interesting to go back to that book because obviously when Mark Zuckerberg started using very in a very emphatic way the term metaverse, I'm not sure he was really aware of this kind of definition, even though he may have been influenced by Snow Crash. So if you look at Snow Crash and you look at the different parts where the author is discussing this notion of metaverse, you end up with a pretty clear understanding of what it is. It's a computer-generated universe. One can access it with using goggles and earphones. It does not really exist, which is kind of intriguing. It's considerably bigger than the Earth. It looks like a street, the Broadway, the Champs-Élysées, etc., etc. You can look like a gorilla, a dragon, or a giant talking penis. 1992. Very interesting to notice that kind of like very male-focused metaphor, and also in the fact that you can make your avatar move through the metaverse like a real person, and it's difficult. It's as if your avatar has just lost his legs. And if you remember what Zuckerberg showed about the metaverse few months ago with legless people, I mean, it's as if someone told him that a metaverse is a world in which people have no legs. So that's kind of weird, but that's not how I want to do this kind of historical perspective. What I'm interested in is more the first part, the use of goggles, earphones, computer-generated universe, and the fact that it does not exist as a physical world like here, but there's some kind of immersion that is described by the way Neil Stephenson described the metaverse. And of course, this kind of recurring promise of the metaverse of immersion using such pieces of technology, it's not just like Neil Stephenson. If you look at the cyberpunk movement in the 80s, for instance, in novels by the authors you can find in the Mirror Shades anthology, or if you look at games, role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, in which a lot of objects described in the cyberpunk universes were presented, for instance, in the cyberpunk role-playing game, you really find like what inspired Neil Stephenson to describe this notion of metaverses, like certain type of goggles, certain kind of headsets, certain kind of immersion in a virtual world that exist in the realm of fiction, in this kind of books or in this kind of games, but that also existed in the realm of technology. And if you're interested in the immersion in metaverses, it's very important to look into non-3D, non-2D, non-graphical words and user interfaces. Like what you have here on the screen here is, it dates from 1979. It's a game called Avatar. It used to run on PC and PC machines, and it's a role-playing game that you can play on a computer collectively using only text, with textual description, with textual interfaces. You would write things like next to create a character. You could transfer your character by typing shift plus next, etc., etc. And this is the kind of chat-like system. It's as if you were on a chat, typing commands that would lead you into some kind of adventure. And that's how the term avatar is the first occurrence of the term avatar in the context of computer-generated word and immersion. And that certainly had an influence on technologies that happened afterwards. And all of those technologies at the time in the 70s and 80s, that such kind of text-based games, they were called MUD, standing for multi-user dungeon. A dungeon, like as in some old role-playing game like Dungeons and Dragons, you had the equivalent on the screen, and you could play a character that discovers a dungeon and do different activities with monsters, or had to chase a quest and stuff like that. And this kind of multi-user dungeon became very prominent in the 80s, and were turned into sort of the ancestor to what we have with the metaverse or MMORPGs with MOO. MOO, M-O-O, stands for multi-user dungeon, MUD, object-oriented. And those were, I mean, it was a very prominent technology at the time. You would connect like this, like you send a telnet command, you arrive on this word called lambda moo, and then you type in command and answer questions, like what happened here on the screen, to interact with people. There's not really a quest. It's just a virtual word, and that the term dates back from that time. And you type in open door, and the door opens, and you enter a room. You type in hi, and your character says hi, etc., etc. And this was very, very important at the time. I remember using this kind of technology. I'm pretty sure Sabrina Calvo has good memories about those things as well. And this was like a new kind of virtual world in which there's no quest. It's not like a game. It's much more like a social kind of platform. And this eventually, if you look at the history in the 90s, it was turned into from text-based virtual worlds into 2D, 3D, 2.5D graphics. For instance, with Active World that you have on the upper left-hand corner, Habbo Hotel on the upper right-hand corner, that says isometric 3D. Le Deuxième Monde was a sort of like equivalent to Second Life that you also have on the screen. Le Deuxième Monde was sort of a French like previous version, no relation to Second Life, but it was like the sort of a similar kind of project that existed in the 90s. And what all of those projects share, it's from the 90s and the beginning of the year 2000. What they share is that there's not really like a scenario. There's not really a quest. It's like Moo. You could you create a character and you live your life in the virtual world, and you discover people. You have social activities. The world is pretty open. Like in Second Life, if some of you remember, you can fly over different islands, and the physics and the graphical metaphor is adjusted to people's needs to socialize and create stuff. And for instance, if you looked at like Active World or the Moo that I presented before, it was fairly easy to create artifacts that you can use in the context of the platform. There was in the first games, the first platforms like this, there were absolutely no money, no tradable object. It became a thing later on, especially with the influence of MMORPGs. So that was one thing. I mean, one history of metaverses would look at what I just shown, the immersion in virtual worlds. The term was coined in the 80s, and it was about being immersed in a world in which you can have social activities or game-like activities. Another strand, another big component of metaverses is the means to provide this kind of immersion, the technology, the interface to do that. And here, I mean, there are plenty of examples that could be mentioned, but there are two technologies that are often recognized as sort of the, starting point of such kind of immersion that we think about nowadays with 3D metaverses. The first one on the left is the work of Ivan Sutherland, American researcher, who built one of the first head-mounted display that you can see here. Very weird kind of contraption. It was so heavy that it had to be suspended to the ceiling, and the system itself was called the Sword of Damocles, as if if the thing fell from the ceiling, you would die. And at the time, this very basic platform, this heavy head-mounted display was heavy, and it was a way to be immersed in some kind of 3D environment where things were presented on the two glasses, stereoscopic display that you could see things with a certain level of depth, but it was really primitive in terms of the shapes, and that happened around the end of the 60s. So that's quite old as a technology. The second one is called the Sensorama, that you can see on the right by Morten Hellig. And that is like a bit different. You could see it and you could put your face into some kind of stereoscopic display. And this is a drawing from the patents of this technology. And what I find interesting in showing you this is that there's two pieces of technologies. There were plenty of interest by the industry in the 80s, like for instance by Nintendo, or in the 90s and the 2000 in 21st century, with companies like Google, Oculus, Sony, etc., etc. And this kind of, head-mounted display is one of the recurring kind of promise that we see coming every now and then in history and interfaces, and most of them are, of course they're interesting, but most of them in general they end up like this. This is a pawn shop in Geneva, cash converter, where you can find some of those technologies after a few years when people stop using them. Of course, if you frame it this way, you would say, yeah, but one could do interesting things with headset. I absolutely agree with that. But what I find intriguing is that the way these technologies, when they were described and promoted by people like Ivan Sutherland or Morten Hellig, they were not really described as something that would replace the keyboard and replace the mouse that just appeared in the 60s, but it was only a possibility. And what is kind of intriguing with this kind of diagram that I show you here, taken from a report about the metaverse, is that they became, the headset became something super important and super promising for a lot of people, as if they could become like the only interface that people would use in the future, along with other different technological components that would constitute what the metaverse is. And the problem of this is that it's a very crude and tech-focused definition of metaverses. Of course, one can do things with tokenization, one can do things with decentralized governance, asset management, or NFTs, and decentralized computing. That's, I'm not trying to build a critique of those technologies, but what I want to state here is that all of those things are just components that designers and artists can play with to create meaningful experiences. And those meaningful experiences are much more important than like the standard of the basic vision of the metaverse advocated by Mark Zuckerberg, by other people who are just trying to jump on the bandwagon. And of course, if you think about alternative versions of the metaverse, one could think about what is missing, what is not present in diagrams like the one I just showed, that could make it a bit more weird, a bit more strange, a bit more meaningful for people. And I'm not talking about flying penises, like the quote from Neil Stephenson. What I'm talking about is creating meaningful experiences that try to reuse or try to turn the technology into something that could be exciting, curious, original, singular for people. And the image I'm showing you here is a project that the media design master student did at the school here probably 5 years ago. And it was, for me, it was one of the best experience I had with this piece of technology. You, as a user, you would sit on a chair like this and discover a kind of haunted house. It was a workshop done by Andrew Sampere from Lausanne. And as a user, you would be carried around on a chair by this group of 3 people. One of the person would send you water sometimes because there's something weird happening in the haunted house. You would go next to some kind of spider web. At some point, you are really afraid of falling into a staircase. And all of this was built around this very basic technology, which is the headset and the immersion. And that's definitely not the canonical definition of metaverse, but the way the immersion was orchestrated by the person on the screen here is kind of intriguing to me and close to something that goes far longer into the past than the definition of metaverse, which is funfair, fête foraine, or all of these attractions that were built around building some kind of entertaining perspective for people using technology, but the technology would only be the starting point. And that's, I mean, and I'm reaching the conclusion of my presentation here. What I try to show in this very super quick overview of the technologies of the metaverse, what I find interesting is that there's the technology, and we learned a lot from the technologies in the last 30 years or so. I mean, of course, Sutherland and his colleagues, that was in the 60s, but the first products appeared in the 80s. What we learned is that technology is not sufficient to think about creating meaningful experiences. There are plenty of other questions that were described by designers, researchers in human-computer interactions, artists, sociologists, anthropologists studying virtual worlds. And all of those issues tend to be, tend to address, a sort of non-binary vision about virtual worlds and metaverses. For instance, instead of thinking that interaction should be free or structured, there's a whole spectrum of possibilities in the way it could be performed. Your identity could be fictional, your identity could be your exact digital twin, but there are many other ways to think about that in between. The items that people use in the game or in the social platform could be tradable and portable, and perhaps you can make money out of it, but perhaps not, and perhaps loosely controlled, as in moves or as in active words, in which you can create the object and just make fun out of it. And same with the metaverse, that could be super grassroots without any brand presence, as opposed to a big brand's presence. And all of those spectrums, and there could be many more of those, should be considered is what, if you think about meaningful projects in terms of metaverses, because otherwise all those promises about metaverses, about the fact that they will be like the super prominent technology of the future, they may fail. And I like this quote by Mark Twain, who said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And with the history of headsets, history of social virtual worlds, history rhymes in the sense that there are things that are constantly reinvented, repurposed, and as the tides recede, after we saw some problems or failures, commercial failures of certain headsets or certain platform, the waters move away from the shore, and various items could remain for people that I call beachcombers, artists, developers, designers interested in building interesting project. And all of those things could be like VR headset from free market, other experimentations. Some may look like commercial failures, others could be more intriguing. And all the new habits that we as human beings built around smartphones, computers, virtual worlds, games, could be repurposed and could be reassembled with metaverses. And it could be about new aesthetic, using machine learning techniques that transform and make the visual mutates or the sound mutates. There could be weird economic dynamic. There could be curious ways to tell stories with objects, with new interfaces. There could be decentralized infrastructures, cross-connecting worlds with hyperlinks. I mean, all of this that is just things that rhymes. They exist. They've been here for a while, and it's important to reinvent them, to take them as a starting point for building meaningful metaverses. Thanks for your interest.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Nicolas. We have a question in the chat by Douglas Stanley, who says, you mentioned the sword of Damocles that symbolically suggests that this technology are chopping off a part of our body while simultaneously adding something new. So the question is about the violent relationship with our body in these spaces. Do we always have to excise our meat body in order to open up our immaterial body? in these spaces?
I mean, that's a good question. Thanks, Douglas. I think I don't have like a clear answer, but that if you remember the slides where I showed like the different spectrums, there's probably one as well about like the relationship between the physical body and the embodiment of your character, your avatar, and for this, there won't be like a one single kind of metaverse. There could be different possibilities depending on whether you want to. If you want to play a flying penis, that's fine. If you want to do the role of a weird fox, that's probably fine in some metaverses and not in others. So that's like the relationship with the actual or not actual or fictional body. But then there's a question about more the ethic of this kind of virtual worlds, and if you really want to include some form of violence, which we know exists. There were stories from rapes in cyberspace from in the 80s already, and the problems with metaverses groping that we heard about a few months ago was also an issue. So is that something that is acceptable or not? And what's the norm here? And I don't really have the answer, but I'm pretty sure, as in video games, that there could be like platforms, or it could be in worlds in which this is acceptable or probably looked upon by certain people. But is that for everyone? I'm not sure about it. So that's a tricky issue, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to understand the collective fantasy behind the idea of a digital metaverse, like with the disappearance of physical distance or unlimited access to content. And do you think that the metaverse can be compared to the concept of utopia, which seems to be a more old-fashioned way to define an ideal world?
Again, that's one possibility among many others, and I'm pretty sure Mark Zuckerberg sees his metaverse fantasies as a utopia, while probably us here around the table are not really into that. But there could be other. There could be other definitions of utopia, other kind of fantasies that builds around probably more collective and more inclusive perspective. And that was certainly, if you looked at what happened with platforms such as Second Life, for a lot of people who did not necessarily have like able bodies, or who wanted to explore different kind of genders or xenogenders, that was probably their definition of utopia. The problem is that when this is not aligned with other people, then there would be some kind of controversies, or they would be not accepted, or if like a company such as Meta want to impose us a certain definition of utopia. In the context of Facebook, Meta, it seems that we have to be one person, one singular kind of person, and kind of play different roles, different character with different bodies, different person with different characteristics. That's not utopia. It's a model that is enforced on and pushed on people, and that would be problematic if that's the only possibility. I'm pretty sure there would be more diverse and more inclusive metaverses, but would they be successful? Would they have enough resources as the big one, the big Facebook Meta one? That I'm not sure of.
And speaking of like failures, I think it's difficult to imagine the consequences in terms of social or ecological, psychological issues of creating a metaverse. And could you give us an example of a failed metaverse and the reasons why it disappeared?
There are many. If you look at, I'm not sure we have to use the term metaverse, but if we look at the ancestors, the virtual worlds, there were plenty of those that shut down. Like for instance, Le Deuxième Monde, this French virtual world, or other ones that existed around the same times at the end of the 90s. One of the reasons they stopped is simply that there's the infrastructure is quite costly to run, and you need to maintain it, and you need to do things so that it can work on new platforms and new computers and new operating systems. So that's problematic, and eventually, like the sort of business model is not really existing in the long run. Now, I think it's important to keep in mind that failure is not only commercial success and million of persons using the platform. Because if you look at Second Life, it still exists. It's not making as much money as people anticipated, but it still exists. There are still people having fun on this platform. There are still like tons of empty places. There were a few months ago, we saw some kind of documentary about the empty places of Second Life. But as I tried to show, like there's a spectrum of possibilities. There's also a spectrum of failure or lack of usage, and it's probably fine that there are like metaverses that are not super crowded and that can exist for a certain community. Now, the one thing that you raised is the ecological issue. That's something that I haven't mentioned in my talk, but obviously this is probably one of the biggest problems we have with information technologies and digital cultures is the fact that this generates a lot of as the economist says, like negative externalities, like it's damaging the planet. So I'm not sure it's really easy to make like this kind of fantasy of the metaverse cohabiting with like ecological ways of respecting the planet.
And do you think that any universe built and controlled by its creator, like the microcosm of a movie or a video game, for example, is a metaverse, a parallel universe?
Sort of, but it's not really existing in the same kind of interactive and immersive way. But it's certainly, there's certainly some kind of connection with this kind of fictional universes, pluriverse, one might say.
Thank you very much. I think we do not have any more questions in the chat.
Oh, there's one. There's one by Aude. I think I need to drink a cup of water and answer in the chat the question about the authors that I think about in terms of metaverse. I'll answer in the chat if that's fine. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Nicolas. Thank you, Maëlys, for moderating the first talk. So as I said, so the first part of this conference was really about addressing the history of the metaverse, the origins and the different attempts to the last decades with Nicolas Nova. And we are just going to prepare for the next talk with Danielle Brathwaite-Shirley, who is here. Everyone, we are back from the break. And as I said, we are moving to the second part of the conference, which will be addressing how artists are conceiving virtual worlds and metaverses. And we are so happy to welcome back Danielle Brathwaite-Shirley. Thank you so much for being here. Danielle is an artist and game developer based between Berlin and London, I think, or maybe you're just full-time in Berlin right now. Okay, great. And Danielle practice, really focuses on creating work that seek to archive the narrative and experience of Black trans individuals. And her work, which live on the internet, I don't know if you should say you are creating games or virtual experiences, maybe we can talk about this, but you also do a lot with technologies such as video game design, CGI, animation, and sound. So again, thank you so much, Danielle, for being here. And I think you have like a role play talk prepared for us, which we are really excited about.
Yes. Okay, let me start that. I don't know if we'll be able to get through the whole thing, but
we'll try it out. We'll try it. All the students are behind the screen, and I told them to participate and all that. So we'll give it a go.
Amazing. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to share my screen. So you can all see this?
It's loading. Yes, now I see your screen. Perfect.
Okay, so hi, my name is Danielle Brathwaite-Shirley. I mostly make interactive installations, essentially. And so I'm not interested in this idea of creating passive art or generating passive work to be consumed. And instead, it requires the audience to actively engage with it to get anything from it. And often I work alongside a group of people to archive them. So I see them as sort of archives, and so I see the potential of digital technology and engines as a form of archiving experiences. So I'm going to start. This is a very strange presentation in which there's a story and there's a presentation at the same time. But the rules are you can ask questions at any moment, and you can ask me about anything. If it's to do with a presentation, to do with a question you have, anything you want at any moment. Just break through. You don't have to worry about interrupting me. So I'm just going to start.
I'll be watching the chat if someone writes a question.
Perfect.
Just in case. Nice.
So this is a presentation alongside a story. You will make the choices of where we go, what I talk about, and what we discuss. This will require your participation either vocally or within the chat. This is not a passive presentation. You are in the homeland. The world has changed. The land we are standing on is sinking, and we must choose what to do. And so this first image is an image from, I think it's called Asheron's Call, which is an online MMORPG. And I put this in there because MMORPGs are quite a foundational part of my life, but also around this conversation of metaverse and metaverse conversation. MMORPGs, which are massively multiplayer online games, were kind of the forefront before this word meta came in. They were doing what the metaverse is wanting to do. But the thing about these MMORPGs is that the community made them prior to this idea that the metaverse is the most important thing. Instead, the MMOs saw the community as the most important thing and changed for them. And this is a conversation I'm very interested to see how it develops in our modern terms of metaverse, especially now the idea of money connecting a wallet and income is a very key conversation in these new metaverse structures. Anyway, we are looking for something. We have been told that what we seek resides somewhere in the vast ocean. This news has not filled you with joy, but worry. How can you search all that water? You prepare a crew and manage to purchase a large sailing vessel, maybe it's an NFT, and set sail to scour the surface of water. Rumors of the wound of the ocean echo across your lips. Others talk about the feeling of being watched. Maybe someone is following you all. Sometime into our journey, and after losing track of the parts of the ocean that we knew, the ocean splits as though two different liquids were meeting each other, like oil and water. One is full of shadows and the other has towering waves that crash down upon each other. So we have the choice of sail towards the shadows, sail towards the strong waves, or no participation. And I don't think you want no participation.
So Miley said sail towards the shadows. Manon, you can, okay, we have a lot of shadows in the chat, so let's go for shadows.
I'll give you 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. I'm not even counting right. 4, 3, 2, 1. Shadows wins. Congratulations, Shadows. Yeah. No one asked me any questions about the shadows, so you just did this on just your own brain. Crew morale, keep your eyes to yourself. This is something, I have these images here as prompts for myself. It's great. But this is something that I feel is so interesting in the metaverse or in online kind of meeting points, is that especially in VR, personal space has not been developed yet. There's no idea of rules of engagement in those spaces, which is a very interesting way of being, especially in these digital spaces, not being able to create a boundary and have people respect those boundaries. But I also want to push the conversation of saying that those lack of boundaries are pretty much everywhere in the metaverse. And there's often a lack of transparency in what actually is going on. And the underground economy that exists there isn't something that you're going to see unless you really dig for it. And there's another conversation about the offshoots and the black markets that come from money in a digital space. So these are shadows of the ancestors. Oh, sorry, these shadows are the ancestors of the sea. If anyone can guess how I made these images, I'll give them a cookie. One of the shadows comes close to you and you gaze upon their face and begin talking to you. If you can also guess this character, you get another. You get an NFT and no one will be able to guess that character. Shadow, if you don't remember us, then that's okay. But we know you better than you know yourself. Do you think about us when you travel over the foundations we made? Those that allow you to walk steadily? They show you cards and one says, follow your body, and the other says, follow your heart. The shadows here seem to have so much depth. And as we sail over them, they seem to have little to no interest in our presence here. We plunge our hands into the water, reaching out towards them, but the closer we think we're getting, the further away they actually seem to be. Some of us manage to strike up conversation with them and ask about this wound we are looking for. The shadows tell some people to sail towards the sun and tell others to sail at night. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. I love that Nicholas just wrote sail. I'd sail to, I think it was at night actually. Let me just double quickly check. Night. Yes. Hard question. Sail at night. It's so funny that you're making these. Usually people ask me about the places they're going, but you lot are just doing blind luck. So good luck. Crew morale. Black trans femmes deserve to be remembered. This is something that you got from the Ancestors of the Sea. We wait till night to sail. A reminder, you can ask me questions at any time you like. We wait till night to sail. And as it grows darker, you feel the presence of something else here. The wind begins to whisper in your ear and it becomes incredibly foggy. You can barely see 100 meters in front of you. And you and the crew begin to feel threatened by this darkness and panic sets in. This was a mistake. So this image here is here because it sums up my practice and my belief in terms of what digital technology can do. So something that I use Blender for, or any kind of program, I use it as a diary. And that's because I think that something about translating yourself into a virtual environment carries an essence of you. I don't believe it can like fully archive every aspect of you, but I think it can capture an essence of part of you at that particular point of time. And so for me, I wanted to remember the first time I took a hormone pill. It was the first time I was self-medicating. It was extremely scary for me, all this kind of stuff. And so on the left-hand side is the hormone pill I took, and on the right-hand side is like the first character I made from a picture of this hormone pill. And I eventually ended up making an entire world that I never released, just for myself, just essentially a diary about this, a kind of whole interactive adventure based on hormone pills, creating the entire world from it. But that's my form of archiving and remembering myself. And the reason I think it's important to do that is because I know the architecture of that world. I built it from scratch. I know how the foundations work. I know how to take them apart. I know the code. I know everything. And that the reason I think it's important, it's about understanding the real estate that you're in on the internet. Often we're in these architectures like Instagram, Facebook, that we don't understand the architecture and we don't understand the changing, ever-changing terms and conditions that we are applying ourselves to. And that's something that eventually, in terms of archiving and being remembered, you have no control over. And so eventually you can be completely erased from these spaces, and everything you've done and are doing means nothing unless that space wants to remember you. Continuing on. Some of the crew think about how they will be remembered when they are lost in this darkness. They swap ideas, pills, and anything anyone needs. So this image here is actually one of my first ever renders in Blender. I had tried some before, but they all failed. And this is the first one that I did every day for about 2 years as a diary. And so I would write everything in there. But I'm putting this in here because often when I talk about technology, the metaverse, getting involved in it, people say, oh, it's impossible. I just don't understand any of it. It's just so hard. But what you have to realize is that the conversation, half of it is nonsense. It's just hype, it's building, it's just tech talk, us tech people don't know how to speak to people because we spend 13 hours a day at our computers. And so most of it makes no sense. And we don't actually know what's going to happen until you step inside of the worlds. And what you got to remember is the community always builds and changes the structure that that they're working in. The community is the hand of God in these situations, because the community will start doing things that they never thought of, start finding ways of circumventing certain situations or formulas, and essentially make it a better place. And often the company are the ones that try and monetize what that community is doing, or find a way to gain something for themselves. And so you have to remember that you're the curators, you're the ones who are a step ahead, because you're the ones actually using the world in a way that no one can conceive it. So don't be afraid of stepping inside of it. Just go in and mess about. Like the first thing I do in metaverses, or just online games, which is hilarious and terrible, I hope you never meet me online, is I just blast music through the headphones. It's just a way of getting in there, not worried about what anyone's saying, just blasting music, being really annoying, really trolly. But it lets you start using it. And then, so if you start having a conversation, you can turn your music down. But it's easier to do that. And I just think you have to find ways of just pushing yourself into these environments. Anyway, this reminds you of a memory at home. And please keep time for me because I don't want to go over.
I think you're good. You still have 15 minutes. Don't worry. Perfect.
Perfect. Through the oppressive night, you can make out two objects that glow dimly in the distance. One looks like a searchlight of a boat, and the boat looks like it's searching for something, and maybe it's searching for you. You're not sure of its intentions when it finds you. The other is a structure of some kind. The light that comes from this is different in a way that you don't understand. Its glow gently throbs. You can either sail towards the search boat, sail towards a structure, or send a warning. What will you do? Structure, structure, structure. Structure, 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 structure. This is literally how I am online. Structure, boat, boat, boat. Structure. Okay, 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So all those people who didn't vote, what you doing? You're going to get thrown off the boat. Structure is where we are going. Crew morale, your community, find your community, find your community, find your community, find your community. So I think it's pretty obvious. What I'm trying to say is find your community. This could be in any myriad of ways. There's no particular kind of community you need to find. But there's just so many out there. You can just search on Google, whatever you're interested in. Oh, if you want, EVE Online, I want to make money on EVE Online. Just search EVE Online Discord. There you go, you'll find it. But I think the main thing about these communities is make sure that you can engage. Like sometimes there's these huge, amazing communities, but the way they communicate is just not good for you. You know, you might need something that, you might need a Twitter space so you can just talk. You know, you might need to join a YouTube chat so you can chat in the YouTube comments. You know, you might love Discords and be able to handle all the comments and forums and everything that's happening. You might want a very small forum somewhere on the internet, or you might want an itch.io page, like anything. Like finding your community is pretty much the best thing to do, because you start to feel less alone in misunderstanding things. And I feel like tech is all about misunderstanding and trying to figure out a way to still use it and work with it. And so you need a community to tell you how to fix things and how to do things and how to figure out problems, because the problem that you might have was not going to be the first time someone's had it. And so my communities are mainly coding communities that you put in, I want to add a video to this program that never supports videos. How do I add this video? And someone will tell you. But doing that, I think is something that's very important in these spaces. And don't feel like you have to enter a safe space just because it's popular. And make sure you enter one that's for you. You know, if it's Fortnite that works, Fortnite's great. You can make money in Fortnite. No one knows. You can make money in Fortnite. You can make money in so many of these spaces. in so many spaces, there's a way to generate money. There's a way to like have a revenue. There's a way to think about making your own spaces. So just find the right one for you, and don't worry so much about what the conversation is and who they're saying go to this Decentraland is the best one. Probably not. Probably Decentraland is probably not the best one. Well, let me be honest with you. Anyone that they're just money is the central focus, probably not the best ones. But yeah, try them all out. Just find the best one for you. The structure is taller than anything you've ever seen. Its immense scale hits you when you sail up to it. It feels as though it's watching you. Its surface, if you can call it that, is as though a cloud has been stretched and somehow hardened. To describe it would make as much sense as seeing it. It's impossible. A silhouette of something appears as though it has always been there. Silhouette. We offer the chance to see two lost worlds. Through our air, you can float to, and I've got the names wrong here. I think this one is, oh, what is it called? Okay, I'll just call them now, whatever they're called right now. You can float to the resurrection lands or the land where we dig for Black trans life. Discuss amongst yourself where to go and why. You must have a good reason. So actually Resurrection Land is Black Sea, and the land where we dig for Black trans life is She Keeps Me Damn Alive. So with this one, you can't just write, oh, Black Sea, Nicholas. You have to write your reason why. Everyone's like, I don't want to write the reason why. You have to. Why do you want to go there? Why do you want to go to the Black Sea or She Keeps Me Damn Alive? And you can ask me questions again.
Maybe while people think about reason, I'm just curious, what type of music do you blast when you enter the, while people think about the reason?
So I play all the music that I'm making.
Oh, cool. I didn't know you were making music too. That's exciting.
Yeah, I will play you one.
Nice, yes.
Yeah, so I make a bunch of music videos for, when I test new technology, I make music videos because it's something quick and it lets you like test like AI rotoscoping or something, you know, it's not a big commitment. And so what I do is I just blast them. I just blast them as loud as I can. Everyone tells me her shit. Everyone is like, this is awful, this is terrible. But it's really fun. It's really fun. And often you'll get someone who's got a better setup that blasts music back at you.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So it's something that's getting rid of that anxiety of like sharing music, sharing stuff you're not proud of, just like doing it. And it starts a conversation. Yeah. People are going to talk to you if you blast music. They're going to tell you to shut up. So
I bet, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like we have some answers. Oh, there's a question. What is supposed to be resurrection?
Resurrection is when you bring someone back from the dead. So Nicholas says Black Sea because I'm intrigued by this resurrection thing. She Keeps Me Damn Alive because it's cool to say stay alive and continue exploring worlds with you. That's so sweet. She Keeps Me Damn Alive because it actually looks like a music title. Okay. I'm gonna 5 seconds for anyone else. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No one else. How dare you? Okay. So I guess it's She Keeps Me Damn Alive.
Yeah, I agree.
You find yourself in a dark room surrounded by figures, all shielding their hair. You feel as though you must be hallucinating, but this place feels so real. Looking around, you come across something that looks like a decision maker. My way of saying a gun. A decision maker. You pick it up, aim it at the screen and shoot. Why did you do that? And why did it feel so natural? Who are you even shooting at? So I put this in here because I did a test to see what the most accessible controller was, and it turned out to be a gun. And so I was kind of shocked by that. I was kind of shocked that the best controller that I would have in my house would be an actual gun. And so people would shoot the screen and they'd be like, this is the best, this works so well. And they'd be able to complete levels. But it's quite disturbing that that's the best controller that we currently have over 50 years of gaming. or the most accessible, I should say, the most accessible and clear controller. And so I made this game in which I worked with 2 Black trans people. They did 2 hours of dancing, and then I used all of that mocap to build everything on top of. So the sky, the sea, the creatures, the evil people, the good people, the water, anything that moved was made from the emotion. So it's basically like a world, an archive of mocapped motion, and trying to build on top of it. So the starting point, instead of a story, was movement. And the aim of the game, which the game tells you, is to shoot to protect Black trans people. But there's one you see in here, but I don't tell you who's Black and trans. So half the time you have no idea who to shoot, and you're just standing there and you're thinking, maybe I should shoot this person. You shoot someone, they go, ah! And you're like, oh no, like obviously maybe this is the wrong decision. And then you fail and it says you didn't kill enough people to protect Black trans people. And that's the whole conversation, is that with a weapon, you might cause more harm than actually good in terms of using it. You can't make these decisions on how to use pain and violence to protect someone, because inevitably you're going to hurt someone that you don't want to hurt, that doesn't deserve to be hurt. And so that was the entire kind of premise of the show. And it was also about learning to do better, like learning as in like not learning to be a better ally or anything, but just learning that the first time you make your actions, you're going to mess up, and you're going to know that's fine. And that you have to re-look at a piece of work to do a bit better and a bit better and a bit better until you can get the good endings, which are 3 good endings in here, because there's 3 levels. And that's something that I don't often see within art or within like kind of digital work or digital art, to be honest, because it's the sphere I'm in. Like, people don't often have a learning curve to their work. They know that people in galleries are fickle and they want to look at something for 5 seconds. But I think this learning curve is something that game engines do so well, and it's such an interesting concept to play with that I've definitely more people should play with it. Anyway, you think about all those you wanted to protect but couldn't. Would a weapon help, or does it make you the target? And during the exhibition, you were surveyed by CCTV cameras for the entire time. And so no matter what you did, I knew. You shoot instinctively, that's all you can do. People fall. You don't even know if you've made the right, this is my dyslexia here, right or wrong decision. You are paralyzed by fear. And so this little demon, I don't know, hopefully you can see it come down now. There you can see it. This demon, I call them demon babies. I call them that and the name stuck. They're all based on me covering my hair for, just for a long time, blah, blah, blah. But essentially what you have to do is you have to go up to these demon babies and read through their iPads and read each character bio description to understand who to shoot. So that's the key to the whole game. But the funny thing is, the greatest thing is when you put something to read in the gallery, no one's going to read it. And so making it a game mechanic was actually really fun, because people come back and they look at it and they go, oh, and they go run back in the room. And so that's the reason it was there, was I wanted people to walk by it and then spend more time in it. And there's a physical version you could also read through. Let's go down. Demon baby, I don't think you know what you are doing. Maybe you should take a look at my hands and see if they can show you what you need to see. And this is the poster based on, if you can guess the game. The game is pretty clear. If you can guess it, oh, well done. Through this journey, you learn the power of the decision maker. We don't know what to do with this. It's dangerous for everyone. Do you take it? Maybe it'll help you when you get to the wound. After learning about all this, you know where to go. Sail towards the wound or take the decision maker. Do we have to stop now?
No, I kind of want to go. I want to keep on going. I want to know where this is going.
Because we end at 15:15, no?
Yeah, but we can take like 10 more minutes. Don't worry. I think everyone wants to know where we are going right now.
I can't, because I have another one.
Okay. So let's make one final decision then.
Yeah. Okay, one final decision, and put any questions in the chat. Anything. It doesn't matter if it's relevant or not. Just put it in. And we'll see what we can get. Get rid of the decision maker. Oh, that's a nice idea. Take decision and sail towards a woman because it's poetic. Wow. I want to know who it is. Who it is. It's a gun. Yes, the wound. No questions. Let me just put no questions. The wound sounds intriguing.
No, go to the wound. Manon really wants to really go to the wound.
Okay, go to the wound. Wound is 1. Crew morale. This is your crew morale. Not great. Some wild ending prophecies, it feels like, that you're having this in this crew morale. No one guessed it, but these smaller images are AI generated images using NVIDIA and using images of Black trans people's faces. And I've just set parameters to make them look like ships.
Looks like, someone says, looks like a Renaissance painting.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I'll take that. You set sail silently. Is the wound open? Yes, the wound is open. You're going to see it in 2 seconds, actually. We set sail silently. The water seems to take on the heat of a body, as though your boat is a hand caressing someone's skin. You need to treat these waves as you would treat your own. Finally, just ahead of us is the wound. So this is the wound. It looks like a hole in the middle of the sea. The difference between a wound and a whirlpool would be that a wound just goes straight down. There's no spiraling of the water. There's nothing. It's as if like someone has punched a hole through time and space and a void just goes continuously down. Finally, we have come across the wound. It's a hole in the sea, a void that refuses to close. Even the water is scared of what lies in the wound as it twists and turns away from the void. The currents begin to pull us towards the wound, and only now do you and your crew begin to wonder, what is in the wound? Discuss. Ooh, what is in the wound? Who is in the wound? And what happens when you go in the wound? You must discuss this before you enter the wound. Good luck.
We have a few minutes left, so let's are people still there? Hello? yes, people are here. Okay, so what do you think is in the wound? Can someone take a guess? Traumas in the wound. Is the Renaissance a big gift?
Resurrection, interesting.
It's
a loop, new possibilities. Were we there the whole time? No. Another wound? No. Void. There's different wounds. There's more than one. Void, metamorphosis. Metamorphosis. All I remember is the Playboy Carti song of that. Meta wound? Absolutely not. It's like, in the wound is a metaverse where you can buy anything you want with ether. No, that's not what's in the wound. Is the wound a portal or a hole? I think it's more of a hole, similar to a rabbit hole. It doesn't necessarily have an end point though. You won't come out the other side. You just keep going.
A new reality.
A new reality? No, it's more like a cave. A Stargate. Have you ever seen a Stargate in the ocean? I don't think I've ever seen one. Knowledge, inner peace. Oh, that's very sweet. Darkness, oh Lord. Okay, but who do you think is in the wound? Who do you think? A dragon. I hope kitties. I'm sure there can be cats in there. But you will never know because my time is up.
Oh no, you cannot do this to us. Yes, we have to enter the wound.
But you can, there's a version on my website that you can play that's a text-based adventure game of this. So it's much more in-depth, way more in-depth than this one, cool. Which is, I'll just put my website here. So you can find out for yourself because I'm all about you doing the actions. Oh, that's my email. God. Sorry, don't email me, please. we go. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Danielle. It was great. Thank you for the big cliffhanger.
You're welcome.
Bye. Thank you so much. This was great, and talk soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So everyone, this was a great talk by Danielle. I guess we have to accept the cliffhanger. But we will start again at 2:30 with the collective Keiken, still again on the subject of how artists and designers are creating virtual worlds. So let's meet back at 2:30. Thank you. Then, hi everyone, we will start again. For this talk, I will let Cyrus and Salome will present the next speaker. We're still in the theme of how artists and designers are creating virtual worlds and metaverses, if I can say it this way. So yeah, let Salome introduce you, and then it's on to you, and then maybe Cyrus will also moderate the question afterwards. Thank you.
So hello, so I'm going to present what you do. So you are an artist collective founded by 3 friends, Tania Cruz, Anna Omori, and Isabelle Ramos. So your work is based on building possible futures, worlds, and practices in the metaverse. And you create these speculative experiences, as you say, magical experiences through different mediums, such as filmography, gaming, installation, XR, blockchain, and performances. And so I'm going to let you show us what's a part of your work and how you work with these possible practices.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. Okay, I'll start my, oh, not this one. I'm going to do the other one. Great. Hi, so yeah, I'm Isabel, but I've co-founded it with Tania Cruz and Hannah Amori. We actually met whilst studying at Falmouth University and sort of decided to, I don't know, we just weirdly wanted to collaborate together and just took it really seriously. And we came up with the name Keiken, which means experience in Japanese, because that was the central thing that we kind of thought, oh, this is what connects our interests, like the idea of the sort of lived experience as a way to investigate sort of consciousness, like live activation, also the way we like collaborate. We're very interested in creating fully immersive experiential spaces. And for quite a while, narrative's been quite a strong element to our work, and for quite a while we've been imagining a metaverse to sort of simulate new structures and ways of existing, and we're really interested in postulating, test driving possible futures. Often there are sometimes in the work like parts where we're reflecting on sort of different contemporary issues as well. And for us, like the metaverse is a fully immersive virtual space of multiple worlds. And in some ways it allows you to become sort of architects or collaborators of the future, because when you're world building, a lot of our work is made in gaming engines, so you actually get to build or imagine what that could look like. We like this sentence, like the metaverse pierces our perceptions of reality and defies all that we know. Yeah, and as we basically do a lot of very multidisciplinary, like do a lot of filmmaking, gaming, installation, a lot of like mixed and extended reality, blockchain, performance, and we're really interested in how societal interjection governs the way we feel, think, and perceive. So what is a metaverse? The metaverse, it's this year especially has been such a buzzword recently. It's been really coming a lot into the mainstream, and we're always like constantly asking ourselves like questions like what is the metaverse, or like how do we get there? You know, is it a 3D virtual world inhabited by avatars of real people? Is it something to do with NFTs, non-fungible tokens? Is it buying virtual land that is awesome rather than filling your body with a sense of inner peace? Is it a parallel universe grown from our collective minds? Neuroscientist Antonia Damasio states in The Strange Order of Things, feelings have not been given the credit they deserve as motives, monitors, and negotiators of cultural human endeavors. And it is feelings that motivate us to build, to invent, and to create all artifacts and instruments of culture. Damasio argues that the root of what we build is based on how we feel. So how are we feeling right now? How do we feel as a society, as a culture, when we're trying to think about what a future world or metaverse could look like? Do we feel free? Do we feel excited, hopeful, balanced? Or do we feel frustrated, anxious, resentful, divided? Do we feel with our whole body or just our mind? It is really healthy to feel an array of emotions. How often we place a hierarchy on which emotions are good or bad, positive or negative. But what about the safety and awareness of our feelings? How do they expel and unfold inside one another? What happens when we ignore or don't process our feelings on an individual, small or societal level over many generations and many future generations to come? If energy can neither be created nor destroyed, energy can only be transferred or changed from one form to another. What do they transmute into? Where do they go? What will our contemporary energy transmute into? And where will it go?
It's hard to be responsible of so many lives. I have a molecular and cosmic responsibility. I have roots.
I've been thinking about how apples became extinct on base reality.
Why do you think that is?
In POM, you can only take one bite, and then you have to throw it away.
Throw away what?
The apple, duh.
So I just showed you a trailer from a CGI film that we made in 2019, but actually we were creating the narrative in 2018, and the film was called For My Metaverse. We made it in collaboration with CGI artist George Jasper Stone, who we actually went to, we also studied with instead of studio, because and we collaborated with a lot of people. We're always collaborating with quite a few people, and it's quite a fluid approach. But anyway, this film, we imagined a speculative future where humans now lived in a metaverse. They did not live on the Earth, and the Earth was renamed base reality to kind of rid the guilt because of the effects of the climate crisis. It really looks at contemporary beliefs and plays on our understanding of reality and the idea that we create our own future through the stories we collectively believe in. It contemplates how individuals can be required to trust, suffer, and live inside worlds that they intuitively disagree with. The work critiques the disconnection of monopolizing desires of corporate and futurist visions in relation to inequality and the climate crisis. It also explores technology as an emancipatory tool, deconstructing physical limitations through sensory understanding and elevating unheard voices. But in this world, humans sort of are primarily living in a metaverse, and it focuses on two different virtual worlds. So one is called Poem Sector, which is a kind of corporate wellness world where we're kind of critiquing that futurist vision. The other one was 068, which was a sort of better world where everything's sort of, you role play in moving into different forms or species or forms of existing role playing to understand and play around with your censoring. So we're trying to think of a more emancipatory space. But one of the main characters who called Pando, which Pando is named after the largest living organism, which is the Pando trees. They have a shared huge root system. So Pando lives primarily in 068 with their child there. But however, because Pando has to earn points to survive, they can't earn points to 068, but they spend too much time in 068 and it's too difficult. So they ultimately kind of die, but then they sort of get rebirthed in some way and it's left in a quite beautiful state at the end. And so this was like a really early storyline of how we were thinking about the metaverse. Also, we explored quite a lot, like the characters had multiple different avatars and some were non-human, more fantastical. So we're really trying to explore, okay, well, you might have completely different bodies in the future and how would that feel and what are the implications with that? Oh, next one. So this is a fairly recent installation, but we actually made the game Wisdom Love 3.0 in 2020, kind of around when there was a lot of maybe it was like, what's the year this year? 2021, that's it. But since 2020, when there was a boom of NFTs happening. So I'm just going to show you the video about it, but this is essentially it's a decision-making game, and it will kind of explain on the video, so I'll let it sort of explain it rather than me and then follow up on it.
Each thing is given a unique center point. From your center point, you weave a story of self. This center point will always be yours. It touches you to the earth and positions your axis of existence.
Wisdoms for Love 3.0 is a decision-making game and NFT project inside an installation. It features an interactive sculpture. The game is set in a speculative world inside our metaverse. And it's really about exploring the bubbled up feelings, collective consciousness and fervent beliefs of the contemporary moment. To begin the game, players must generate a unique username. Smooth Reality 374. Players have to work their way through a labyrinth of metaphorical decisions. The interactive sculpture is the map of the game and it tracks the player's journey. Do you take the path of the Divine Mother?
Become a human god.
Stay on your moral high horse.
Gods are no longer elsewhere. Instead, they stand on top of giant melting icebergs, so that they can exist as high in the sky as possible.
The water runs, the water cries. It feels sadness and happiness, fear, joy, itami, yorokobi.
When reaching certain points within the game, players activate water mode, which creates a rippling across the water's surface. This was actually really important to us that the water could respond to the players' decisions, because in the game we're really trying to encourage players to visibly see and understand their molecular and cosmic responsibilities. The world of the game doesn't just sit upon the water is actually connected to it, and it reacts and responds to the players' decisions. The game has many hidden rewards, so players can collect a free NFT. They can also download their own unique collection of wisdom tokens collected during their gameplay. These can be accessed at any time during the game, or they can take them away with them by scanning a QR code which links them to a unique website displaying their rewards. From this site, they can download a zip file containing all of their collected tokens, a moral contract, and free posters. So these posters are actually kind of similar to something like a Pokemon poster, and it displays all of the wisdom tokens that players can collect during the game. The project's overall concept is in response to the boom of NFTs and the use of blockchain. We're trying to imagine how to use the blockchain in an emancipatory way, using wisdom as a form of exchange rather than a financial one.
So Wisdoms for Love 3.0 considers wisdom as a tool for growth and change, and proposes it as a form of currency to transact with that could be applied to the blockchain and integrated into future Web 3.0 technologies. This could create alternative definitions of wealth for the game of the earth. Money is a transactional tool in which we are chasing numbers for survival and success. It's the way in which we maneuver through the system, and it affects how we can move through it. What happens when we use the blockchain to store nuanced and ephemeral forms of value and mediums of exchange? So if you can see here, here's a sort of like wisdom. Here's all the different wisdom tokens that you can collect, and it's a poster of all of them, kind of in like a Pokemon style. And each of these tokens has a different meaning to them. And when you download from the game, you can also, there's the online version as well, and you get to keep all of these different wisdom tokens. We have a moral contract that goes with it. So all of these wisdom tokens represent different feelings or beliefs. In it, for example, the knives, they are center points. So everyone has their own unique center point that tethers you to the earth and positions you in your very unique position on this axis of space-time. But also your center point, your perspective can be a greatest source of wisdom, but it could also be used as a weapon. So that, for example, let me think of another one. There's like the climbing on top of each other sculpture. There's high horse, so staying on your moral high horse. There's just, they represent different ones. In terms of like thinking about exchange, we've recently actually been thinking quite a lot about, for example, raising consciousness, like raising a child, you're raising consciousness, that is one of the most important jobs, but it's not valued as work or as something that's good or something that's profit. Like if you raise consciousness super well, that should be seen as social good, that should be seen as profit. So if we're thinking about in the future, what change do we want to make about how we value things? What are our modes of exchange, essentially? Okay, I'll go into the next thing so that I could keep on track of time. So this is a piece called Players of Cosmic Realms, which combines two different pieces together in an installation. And this was at Aspects in Portsmouth, which was on show this January to March, so it's fairly recent, but some of the work was made sort of a year before that. So I'm going to share another video.
I feel the contemporary rhetoric of the metaverse is being approached in a very short-sighted way. The metaverse is another level of highly advanced technologies and digital realms for us to be constantly living in. How we collectively approach the metaverse is we view it as cosmic, because transporting your consciousness into another realm is a spiritual act. Disembodying is something that needs to be approached holistically. So the questions we are asking are, what kind of future gaming environments and tools do we want to use to get us to the metaverse?
In Player of Cosmic Realms, the audience are invited to become players within an immersive gaming environment where they can interact with two different artworks, the live game and Better Bodies. We chose to present these two works together because they both reflect on expanding our human Umwelt using emancipatory technology. Jakob von Uxküll coined the concept of Umwelt. So all that a subject perceives becomes their own perceptual world, the Merkwelt, and all that they do becomes their effector world, the Werkwelt. Perceptual and effector worlds together form a closed unit, which is the Umwelt.
The Life Game is an interactive film series. In the first episode, Viral Energy, the audience interact through touching the pop-ups as they appear on top of the film. The first pop-up appears after the protagonist, Me, downloads a new technology because they're feeling lonely, a digital twin called My. It's this uncanny moment where what the character behind the screen touches and what the player touches meet, connecting both the physical and digital realms as inextricable and as fictitious as one another.
Me and their digital twin Mai are connected through their dependency on and the shared animistic nature towards their screens.
We are longing for.
Over time, Me begins to understand that in this reality, self-centered technologies are disguised to be evoking connection whilst they actively produce loneliness. So this completely changes the way Me feels about Mai.
In the second episode, Battle of Reality, Me and Mai navigate a new decentralized system in the metaverse. It follows a separate path Me and Mai take after the breakdown of their whirlwind relationship.
In episode 3, Dreamtime Life Simulation, players are invited to view the interactive playing cards whilst watching the film.
In the metaverse, we often explore what kind of technologies we will need and what it might be like to exist through multiple avatars.
In Dreamtime Life Simulation, Me transforms into their avatars Matt and Nix. There they create their own emancipatory technologies and use the metaverse to connect to their ancestors. They were able to do this with the aid of the Ancestor tool, an internal technology used to listen to the ancestral whispers of wisdom.
For Better Bodies, we've been creating a new technology called the Meta Womb. It is a haptic wearable womb currently in its beta stages. We are test driving how can the architecture and wisdom of the womb combined with haptic technology be used holistically to expand the Umwelt.
Probably the first time I've ever thought, I wonder what it feels like to be a pregnant animal.
Experiencing the sounds and the sensations, I was noticing what was happening in my body, in my arms and my fingertips, and how I felt a little bit more grounded, I think.
I found myself going inside myself and then realising that I was holding and sort of felt quite protective over what I was cradling.
I feel like I got imaginary and visionary kind of picture of what happening in my words might be, another word, the metaverse.
Yeah, so in this piece, we're really trying to take a holistic approach to the creation of the metaverse and considering not only what kind of worlds and bodies could exist in the metaverse, but what kind of technologies and gaming environments do we need to get us there? And how do we care and use our whole bodies to connect us to our avatars and platform diverse bodies? Just so like a couple of things on it. So the haptic wearable womb, that's something we've been sort of developing. We've had different animal noises like put into it, so you kind of feel the vibration. A lot of technology only really activates, like if you think about what we're on now, that our screens, it really is activating a lot of our neocortex decision making and thinking. There's not a lot of technologies that's really activating other parts of your body or the wisdom, like for example in the stomach womb area, there's a lot of like wisdom and knowledge. And it's interesting because we've tried it on lots of different people. There seems to be 3 different general responses. One is it makes people feel very relaxed and meditative. The other, it makes some people feel very visionary, so they actually start to imagine lots of worlds. So actually sometimes the metaverse is already inside us anyway. Multiple worlds exist. We have multiple consciousness. And the third is if someone's had maybe something slightly traumatic in that area, very sensitive, they found that it's, even though it's been a bit uncomfortable, it's allowed them to have a safe space because they are in control of it and moving through those slightly uncomfortable sensations. I don't know, how are we doing for time? Am I going a bit over now?
I think we have like, yeah, actually, 5 minutes left, but I mean, that would be, we can run over a little bit because I know that Sirius and Salome have some question. I'm sure the audience have some question for you, but yeah, we should probably wrap up the talk pretty soon.
Okay, I'll just try and be, I think it's pretty much near the end, so I'll just do that and I'll just show one other thing very quickly.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Me? Do you understand the depth of what I've been feeling recently? Of course, I'm always following the focus of your eyes. Don't worry, I have all your data inside me. If you've been overthinking, I can always up your likes if you like. That usually makes you feel better. No, thank you. It's so temporary. I always feel worse later. But I can solve your problem now. I can put the world into categories. That really helps you to understand what's going on in your mind. But that's not true. You confuse my reality like a mirage. We are suffering. I'm sorry, Me. I'm going to have to leave you for all.
GPS moral compass. Position simple yet intricate. A self-driving Uber combined with psychiatry, offering simultaneous therapy and on-demand journey service. I'm a double whammy, and ultimately, I take you to your desired destination within. Recent updates include Web 3.0.
To leave me for all. What did I do wrong? Why would they hurt me like this?
Maybe you should find a new system too.
Yeah, I can find a new system. Maybe if I catch them all, then I will own all and me will come back to me.
What I meant.
That makes so much sense. I'm recharged with speculative energy now, so I can do anything. Thank you, Moral Compass. You always help me find myself. You can just drop me off here.
Before you go, here's your data. Keep it safe in your self-sovereign wallet.
But that's not enough. I don't value myself.
Me, you are of highest authority for yourself, not others.
Whatever, I'll see you later.
So if I go back to the Antonio Damasio, which like the nearby beginnings of culture are to do with how we're feeling. We are not, I might get this wrong way around, but we are not thinking machines that feel, we are feeling machines that think. So if we believe that how we feel now and how we will feel as the years go by are the embryonic stages of the metaverse, and we are not just talking about the people influencing and part of the NFTs and the metaverse currently, but it is about how the collective consciousness feels, how we are treated, how we treat the earth, whether we consider it holistically, whether we consider holistically all living beings when we are thinking of the metaverse. For example, if we don't consider other living beings in the metaverse, we will appropriate animals, but they won't exist in the simulation. When we approach the metaverse, we look at the most amazing simulation that we already exist in, the Earth, and how everything is connected. For us, we see the creation of the metaverse as deeply philosophical, natural, and spiritual that requires the utmost compassion, fluidity, care, and understanding. To uphold dialectic thinking as its molten core, not just as humans trying to become gods. We will leave you on a quote by John Perry Barlow, who created the Declaration of the Independence in cyberspace. It is an act of nature. It grows itself from our collective minds. We will create a civilization of the mind. May it become more humane and fair than the world and governments have ever made before. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Keiken, for like the wonderful talk. I mean, it's amazing. There's like a lot to unpack. It's like very dense, very heavy in terms of like visuals, in terms of like feelings and like aesthetics. We have like a cluster of like 3 different like questions and themes, but like a first question that I would like to ask is the question that relates to like bodies in space.
Mm-hmm.
So you work a lot with like, you know, this idea of like, you know, approaching like different bodies in space, whether it is like the cyberspace, like the metaverse, or trying to find ways to connect with like real bodies in the space of like the exhibition. And when we see, let's say, the introduction of like the metaverse by Meta, reduced to an avatar that has no legs, that is like, you know, that has like a very, let's say, cartoonish aesthetic. And you guys show like bodies that are like very different, that are like distorted, that have like, you know, that kind of like very, let's say, humanish approach, but at the same time a bit weird. Can you explain like this rationale, your ideas between, you know, between the lines of like showing different bodies?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, recently I was going to show what we've been doing very recently, but I was like, we've already said so many things, so I'm running out of time. But we've been, at the moment, we've been well-bedding and trying to imagine a future maybe quite far ahead, so further ahead than we were thinking about the film My Metaverse Time. So this is like maybe 500 years ahead in the future. And we've been looking a lot at morphogenesis. So morphogenesis is, I just want to be able to say the science a bit better. But essentially your cells, when organic forms grow, the cells actually communicate to each other to grow to your form. If you get a cut, for example, your cells know to grow it back. So we actually have morphic like potential within us. So there's a biologist called Michael Levin who's been doing a lot on like reptiles or insects, where you basically recode the electrocodes of cells. And so, for example, is chop a worm, and then the worm will grow a head on the other end, so you can make 2-headed. So the idea is potentially in future, you might not only be able to like regenerate your limbs or your organs, but you could grow new limbs. So we could physically be very, very fantastical or whatever we like. And at the same time, there's a lot of the transhumanist developments, which is about upgrading or incorporating technological advancements into the body. So we've been really thinking a lot about, okay, well, if you had these, like, say, for example, you could hear from miles away, you could hear whispers from miles away because you've had new sensors in your ears put, or you might have photosensitive skin, so you could get a lot of your energy from the sun or something like that. Or you could grow like fantastic forms. You might be operating on a different level of consciousness. So would we end up just having like a lot of culture being defined by your upgrades or morphogenesis? And then what about the people who don't have as much of this like morphogenesis? The way you operate and navigate will be so radically different. And it's like, how would you move? How would you have your relationships? It's like you might end up, I reckon there would be, like, we're thinking a lot, like there would be a metaverse that would be incredibly like realistic and fully immersive and powerful, but then you might also have, you might be able to live on the earth, you might be able to go a bit more into space now, and you'd have very different like body types and thoughts processes. Would you end up, what would happen to emotions and relationships? Because someone might just spend all their time in the metaverse and just only get more and more like separated. I think, yeah, we're always trying to redefine like, oh, what could the body be, but also the wisdom of our body, even our current bodies. And I think as well, it's like, we've been thinking a lot about it in terms of and then alongside that, we've been looking at like Budo, which is a Japanese form of theatre where it's about resonating with the darkness, transformation, and fragility. So what about the importance of death and fragility actually in this, and what happens when you have less death and less fragility, for example, if it was like really a lot ahead, and how does that define? I don't know if I'm making sense, but for us, like the metaverse, like for example, if you look at Meta or a lot of contemporary like 3D virtual worlds, it's quite, except like in gaming, obviously there's very fantastical characters or avatars that you can embody. It's very limited. It's just like we could imagine this to be so much more in some ways. So we're really like looking at that and that sort of like regeneration of like where our consciousness could go.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for like the very detailed answer. And I'm going to ask if the public has some questions, maybe.
If not, I can ask another question.
Yeah, go ahead. Maybe we can have one last question because it's already, the next talk is supposed to start soon. But yeah, go ahead, Salome.
Okay, so we were wondering. So you work a lot. So you're building these virtual worlds, these metaverses, and what are the challenges of showing these virtual experiences in the physical world? Like, do you sometimes have to add some new elements, new assets to your projects when you show them in the physical world?
Yeah, so thanks for that question. So we actually love making like physical immersive installations. Like we love to incorporate all of the senses. Like I think in future we actually really want to, we've been looking a little bit into soft robotics, and we want the installation to become alive. We want people to get really immersed in it, whether they want to think about the metaverse, the concept or the narrative. It could just be an enjoyable experience. We feel that's really important. I think definitely the challenges are like we work in Unreal gaming engine, and there is a lot that you can do with it, but it is really challenging. Like at the same time, I do say like it's really good to, it's not as intimidating as it looks, but you can just go so detailed with it, and it's just such heavy like workload to be able to do it. And like creating an avatar, you can creating an avatar. Tani does a lot of the avatar making. So in a lot of films or games, they'll have a team of, I don't know, like 10 people, sometimes more, making just one avatar to that level of detail for 6 weeks, like full time. So it's such a laborious process, like doing all the details, and you have to move between lots of different programs. And for us, having really customizable, unique avatars is like really important. Like when we first started making the avatars, like you could kind of get what are human, and then you work into them, felt very like that, like they felt very like misogynistic. They were quite, there was like very Eurocentric and features, and now it's a little bit better, but so we feel it's really important to be able to go in with that much detail into it. There are definitely like really cool things in the game engine. Like you can make something really like this huge building, or like defy the laws of physics. And if I was ever to make such a huge building, it wouldn't be physically possible for me to do in reality, and I wouldn't have the finance to do it. Whereas I could make it. I mean, there is still a level of like finance, but it's minute to so big. Like the Unreal gaming engine is generally, it's free. It's just it's more the computer power required for it sometimes.
Thank you so much. I think we have to, I mean, there's still so much to talk about, but yeah, thank you very much. Someone in the chat said that they really loved your talk, and it was really resonating with what they've been also thinking about. So again, thank you for taking us into your work and for being here this afternoon.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for that lovely like comment. I'm not sure who wrote it in the chat, but thank you. And thanks so much.
Thank you for your talk.
Thank you so much. And thanks a lot for having me and listening. And if anyone ever has any questions, just like reach out. We're on quite good. We're fairly okay at replying on Instagram. So.
Okay, good to know then. Thank you so much and talk soon, I hope.
Bye. Yeah. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Great. Thank you so much, Sirius and Salome, for moderating this talk. And now we are actually moving to the last part of this afternoon, which was more focusing on, how we create those worlds, basically, and the question of design and production of this virtual environment with Christian Loclair, and I know he's online. Yeah, great. Hi, Christian, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. It's exciting.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So yeah, we've been we started the afternoon talking about the history of the metaverse, and then we had Keiken and Danielle Brathwaite-Shirley talking about how artists and designers are creating virtual world. But we thought it would be so great to have you also part of this conferences to actually talk about your experience building virtual world and metaverses. So I will just introduce you briefly before we diving into your talk. So you're an artist, you mainly work with interface, and you also have a background in scientific research. You use custom algorithm, data, and digital devices. You create sculpture, video works, installation, and your work really focuses on the idea of aesthetics and friction of both human and digital identity. Thank you so much again for being here, and I let you start the talk, and then I will come back later for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I try to sum up real quick what this talk will be about. I will build a little bridge about us coming from arts and positioning different metaverse ideas also on the market with global partners, and coming from art and going then also with industrial partners on a larger scale. We do believe that we saw that those two worlds have something in common, and very often, of course, the arts are the igniter of those new ideas, but also as we see very clean mathematical studies, it's very interesting for us seeing why actually giant companies rename their whole brand. And it has actually a reason that was early observed in the arts, but got later justified by design, engineering, and business. And I would like to build that bridge as good as I can. So let me try to share my screen real quick. Can you see this?
Yeah, it's working.
Perfect. Thank you. So I would like to speak about Journey, and it's called the Metaverse Company. And if you're interested, I could share later why. And it's powered by its original studio, design studio Waltz Binaire for emerging technologies, art, and design. And this is two different companies that I both co-founded, and together we would like to speak where we come from, and that is Waltz Binaire. And what we're doing here is that we have, let's say, a scientific perspective on arts and experience, and we have an artistic view towards science. We come from both worlds, and we try to have a continuous interdisciplinary collaboration in which we both respect different expertises and enrich each other. So when it comes to computer science, what you see here is from our laboratory on the right in 2009, also recorded at the Global ACM Library. And what you see on the right is Google in 2019 quoting us. On the left, you see the first deepfake car. Why do I share this? We are ultra nerds, and we do a lot of things as a little research laboratory in-house, as we are all first tryout. So our design approach, our research approach is code it. No wireframes, no mood boards, no big branding discussions or philosophy, but always play with your fingers directly in the keyboard and try to find essence in there. On the other hand, we are heavily invested into arts. We produce our own pieces, as we do believe that we are responsible to co-build with others together a future based upon science and technology that is understandable to people and connects to people. So for instance, based upon artificial intelligence, we built a machine that thinks about itself while looking at the mirror. And that is projects that we invest ourselves 2 years in, as it's really at the heart of what we do at Studio Walls Binaire. And how is that studio actually working? How can that studio actually live from all those computer science experiments and from all those arts that we built? Well, only when it really matters. We are asked by big brands for collaborations. When it comes to two things, it must be very, very difficult to build and still be beautiful and stable. And then we come in and we try our best to contribute somehow. Now, for us, the pandemic was not too nice, because normally what we are hired for might be Milan Design Week or the Expo Dubai or the Documenta. We need places and encounters with real humans and real sensations from technology. And if they are gone, then this is not good for Walls Binaire, because the poetry does not necessarily work through a Zoom call or through YouTube marketing or through Instagram self-portraits. That is not really what we are interested in or what we are good at. So we then directly felt like, how this right here is the biggest AI sculpture on the planet, and it directly arrived in the first week of the Berlin lockdown in April 2020. And it was the largest sculpture we ever made. We asked ourselves, well, how do we actually speak now to people? No one is allowed anymore to come to the studio. We should use Instagram. But it felt stupid and wrong making a selfie or after 2 years of work. When you work 2 years on a piece, how many likes are you expecting? And how much memory do you expect from your audience? There is none. We actually didn't even know a blog or a channel that would justify 2 years of work or any idea that we would like to philosophically share. So we thought, we are living in an environment in which we are not given on social media actually a channel where we can get from people time, where we can get their time to listen and discuss with us. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't like it, but we would love this exchange, and we do believe those platforms do not even exist. And then we thought, well, maybe there is a certain sense that we could digitize that is not yet digitized. Maybe the internet is just text and images, and it's some kind of an accelerated newspaper, but it has no experience quality at all, while the actual real heavy lift is still very far from being digitized. And so we thought, let's start with a little gallery. And what we then built is a virtual museum, supposed to be open in 2020. But what you see here is the first 2 weeks of work. And we were supposed to open on 1st of May in 2020, and it's about 40,000 square meters that we did in the first 2 weeks. And we basically closed the studio and went into a vacation freestyle research mode. And we had a lot of fun. And as soon as we communicated that at the design conference, people asked us, well, could we also use your museum to exhibit it, what we want to do? And we said, yeah, that's getting difficult because we have only one museum. But wait, why shouldn't we build a platform so everyone can drop in their arts and have their own museum? So we should directly think ahead of this. And then commercial clients came over and said, if you could demonstrate that we could also have a room showcasing our products in an immersive experience, then we can help you finance your museum and we can support you on this. So we made little demos in May 2020 based upon WebGL, demonstrating how and which kind of visual quality we could have for our clients so they could help us. And then we felt like there's a problem, because why should anyone show up in any of our museums? That is a crucial problem. And we maybe have just coded but never thought with our little art gallery that far. Why should it be successful? But we got so much feedback, so we try to reiterate that. And in general, I do believe that there's two major dimensions that need to be respected in order to have any success or potentially any visitor in the internet. And I would like to say also in a second what I mean with the internet. The one thing is accessibility, and in this case, I mean not accessibility in the case of disabilities, because I do believe that has to be cleared on the device side. But I mean, can actually people go in there? Can they find that? And how would they ever come? Download an app? And the other thing is, on the experience level, how nice is it to be there? So what would you get there? Do you get an image? Is the future of the museum Instagram? Or is it something that I enjoy? And how much do I actually enjoy that? And when it comes to accessibility, actually everything that wants to start anywhere needs to start through a link. And when you click a link, then the gate to the internet, which is the browser, needs to open a new tab. And when that new tab is opened, you might discover that you like in 2008 Twitter. But if it wouldn't have worked in a browser, it wouldn't have worked. So every new idea, in our humble opinion, needs to come through the browser. If you have a metaverse and you want people to go in there real quick and try it out if they like it or not, it must be in the browser. That is my design belief. Of course, I can't tell. And on the other hand, it somehow needs to be very nice, but very nice might be virtual reality, and the graphics we can accomplish through AAA applications like we just mentioned in Unreal 5 and PlayStation 5. But not many people have them actually on a global scale, way less than we think. Very strong computers is normally for graphical intense calculations. But a lot of people that are journalists only need to type. Why should they have strong computers? They don't have a PlayStation 5. And it's an absolute minority how many people actually have virtual reality glasses at home trying things out, besides playing tennis or something, but really on a regular base working with it. So what we needed to find is any way to build super high experience quality, totally accessible for everything. And that basically means we need to get highest quality experiences directly in the browser, which then again means we can't have it on the end device. So whenever you open a homepage, you basically download that homepage. That's sometimes takes very long. It's not very accessible. You download that 2 GB 3D homepage on your computer, but unfortunately you have a computer like a journalist and you can't execute that homepage because we call that client-side rendering. Your machine is responsible to calculate all those visuals. And if it's then getting too hot, it crashes. And then it's, again, not accessible. So the only way we thought it could be done is through a streaming service. I do believe there's actually not even an alternative to it, in my opinion. So if you think of a streaming service the way you know it, then you can think of YouTube or you can think of Netflix, which are very different models, but they're both have the same system. It's cloud storage. That means you have nothing on your hard drive, just a little app. You pay them €10 a month, and therefore you get everything. You get access to, let's say, a Google Drive with a user interface, and that's it. And that is their whole model. But then we thought, could we also have the same with computing and remote controlling PlayStation 5s? So instead of having hard drives in the cloud, we put PlayStations in the cloud, servers in the cloud, that we can basically remote control. So think of Netflix, but instead of a remote controlled Unreal world that I don't need to execute on the client side with my computer, but that is executed and streamed in real time back to my device. And that allowed us to have AAA qualities of God rays, of smoke, density, atmosphere directly in the browser, accessible in under 3 seconds of connection and no downloading. And then we thought, well, now that we have those visuals, we can also build new visual sensations of encountering and multiplayer environments. And from there on, which was then after like 6 months of very intense work, we've got our first supporters, which we urgently needed because that software, as we heard earlier, is very intense. It's Unreal, it's cloud technology, all custom handwritten from scratch, more or less. And it's web technology, and it's quite a huge project to pull this off. We needed support, and we found beautiful support by partners that said like, okay, now we go with this new world. We have done trade shows enough. Maybe we should open up to new audiences and build fantastic worlds. And if you know anything about marketing, for instance, in the German automotive industry, to have a mushroom forest is quite outrageous for them. It's very far away from their origins and what they are proud of as a 100-year-old company. But we found many partners that said, let's open up to new sensations in Web 3.0, metaverse, NFT space, and let's discuss with new audiences what we could do. We had Christoph Waltz, the actor, teaming up with us as the narrator of our worlds, Coldplay doing concerts. We did a lot of different festivals, actually only for real world festivals and streams. And we did the CS in Las Vegas then again to do like more video game scenarios instead of experiences and festivals. And we did all those features, and I want to go over all those features, but maybe one thing about those features is interesting. If you have partners, if it's a museum, if it's an art gallery, or you have strong industrial partners, there's a misconception about how the internet works and how incredibly expensive it is to compete in the internet, which is the most driven industry field. And if you want to do something in there, you are around the strongest companies in the world, and they might call themselves Meta, and you will feel that. And then there's huge companies of only a couple of $billion size, and they're also sitting there, and they're preparing for the new metaverse. If we want to play there and you want to position that for art galleries, for museums, and want to compete with it, you need to do it all. Because everyone is used to know that Zoom is more or less for free. But if not, then you can use Google Meet, which is also for free. But it's not really for free to build your own voice chat. It's quite intense, but they will expect you to do so. And that was quite a challenging time for us, that they said, in the next 4 weeks, we do a conference with you if you have voice chat, your own video stream in the metaverse, or we won't do it. So we had to follow all of that up to get through any market position. Of course, we positioned a lot of forests and elephants. And today we are having more metaverse cases than Meta all over the globe. But when you go in such a rush in just 2 years, completely changing a new company with right now 50 employees, it's very hard sometimes to roll back and analyze the method. So a scientific approach to any observation is you collect data and you compress that to an intelligent statement. So what did we actually learn? Because if you don't compress it, you cannot grow, and you cannot get new insights or generate new design decisions because you do not understand the core of what you are doing. And till today, it got very difficult for us to understand why someone needs a space. So how did we actually even move from our little art gallery, from our AI sculpture, to the global host of H&M metaverses? What is it that we as artists actually have in common with their needs? How could that be aligned? And now this, well, maybe both need space, right? Maybe both believe in virtual spaces. Why? The biggest internet model, the biggest business model on the world, has obviously transformed the 3D world that we know into a 2D world that doesn't need any space and any time. And what you see here is the biggest business model on the planet. So who should be so crazy to introduce a third dimension into this very well-working business model? And I do believe we sometimes tend to look in the wrong direction when we speak about the metaverse, because the metaverse promises a space, but the space in general has no scarcity and no meaning. You can build one space or two spaces, and you can build here one real factory hall, and then you scale and you build a second. But the ultimate NFT, the ultimate scarcity is time. And the only reason why people actually build metaverses is because those spaces are potentially so beautiful that people stay a little longer. And what we wanted in the very first beginning, that people stay a little longer with our little art piece, was driven by the idea, wait, why should they look at our art piece? There's so many art pieces. Maybe we need to give them a beautiful space so they hang out with us and stay a little longer, wandering around, resonating hopefully about art. And then we met clients that said, yeah, our problem is we want to turn around the business. We would at least like to try to be more sustainable, for instance. But actually it's hard to be believable because no one gives us likes on social media for that. Probably because they don't believe us. But how should they? They don't even listen. So how are we actually blocked by trying to innovate? If no one would ever believe us, we would need at least 3 minutes of their attention, showing them what we really try. And that is what they had in common. And that is what I believe in. The metaverse has nothing to do with space. The ultimate NFT is time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this this talk. It was I mean, maybe the audience already have question, but while everyone is thinking about the question, I thought I wanted you to talk a little bit more about this the time this notion of time, and how do you go about thinking about the world that you create? Is it like, does Journey has like is own type of world, or do you always kind of like collaborate with your clients? And then also I wanted you to talk a little bit about the avatars that you created, because they're quite unique in a way.
Yeah, maybe step by step. So it depends on the range of the project and also the constellation. We did had in the beginning a lot of clients that want their office building virtualized. But that took only 6 months or 9 months. And you could see how people transformed, saying like, yeah, I have an office building, and now I pay for a virtual one, a digital twin. No, please show me actually what the future will be of a virtual space. That is your design task. And we saw a lot of people actually from also more let's say down to earth business environments actually having challenging design tasks, which is very interesting. Then we also saw that a transformation and interaction. So we actually offer everything, and that is really necessary in my opinion. WASD, click where you want to go, just one click. You can control it with one finger, because a lot of people will come in with a touchpad. They cannot drag. And then those with a mouse, they always drag because they experience this on browser. And the next ones always say like, I want to use my cursors, but because potentially the cursors are for that. You have to be safe that you do everything. And whatever they do will be right. And still at the first 6 to 9 months, everyone disagreed. They said, I once played a video game, it should be like that. Can we have a controller? Yeah, but not your guests. How do I know they have a controller? And that has also completely transformed in the first 6 to 9 months. In the beginning, everyone thought we are doing it wrong. But after more and more success, a lot of people felt like, if I'm doing it wrong, and we had the chance that it stopped being discussed, because it's very difficult for every gallery, every museum, every partner. You need to rethink interaction in general. Then you cannot grow. And when it comes to the worlds there, or the avatars, when we first started, it was so small that we couldn't even afford to build avatars ourselves. And the only chance for us was build one avatar that goes for everything. And we're like, oh my God, that is the hottest area you should never touch. Try not to even build any gender, anything, you will kill yourself. So we started with the most androgynous characters, totally avoiding any discussion if this is man, female, I believe it's more like this. No, we are nothing. We're just a shape with legs and arms and a face that you can look at. This is important. This is important. This is important. But all the rest, please ignore. And then we found more and more partners, more and more people supporting us, going into real projects in which we then could afford a real creative production of new avatars. But I do believe in order to avoid misuse of those directions, I would like to continue, no matter how much they're designed, to always avoid gender, always avoid anything. And if we all believe that value comes from within, then I don't even know why we should continue with bodies at all. Maybe you can also come how you feel. And maybe at some days we just feel like a little trash bucket, like a bin. And then we are walking bin. And maybe the next day we feel like a heart. I would like to recommend, especially for scalable metaverse platforms, to avoid any misuse and to, by design, block any kind of insult that can be easily done. Whatever people are allowed to express might be used by others, feeling the need to degrade others. So we, by design, block certain things, for instance, sexuality and gender. This is not the space to discuss. Come as you feel. That is what's very important to us as a design principle. Otherwise, it gets difficult with multiple thousands of guests. Yeah. When it comes to world design, we have made our principles, and I could like to share them with you if it's not too boring. But,
no, I think that's great. I would love that.
I do believe that most things should be inspired by the real world and therefore you need to maybe have a walk in the forest. So for instance, when you walk in the forest, there are certain things, visual indicators that will make you feel comfortable there. And if you walk in an open field that has no grass anymore, let's say sand, and the sun is directly pushing on you, there's a certain, even though it's very subtle, there's a certain unhealthiness about that place. And there's a certain richness and healthiness and positivity about a forest. You will have the exact same in the metaverse, exactly the same. So when you, for instance, see a path that you walk on, everyone wants this to be from nature, but no, it shouldn't feel like your sneakers get dirty. And it should be best as like rocks accompanied with grass. So yes, rocks, but it's healthy. And if you have the sun directly without blockers and without clouds and without trees giving you shade, people feel always less healthy in those spaces and less comfortable. So for instance, we always throw things, mostly trees, in your view, blocking the sun to have God rays going through the rays, so it flickers as you move ahead, but not necessarily because it must be always a tree, but because it's the most healthiest sun blocker we can imagine. And that is, for instance, some of the design principles. Another design principle is between two actions, it's not as slow as the real world, 10 hours from Berlin to the MoMA in New York, but can also not be as fast as the complete passive Instagram. We do believe that the sweet spot between one information and then moving your body to the next sensation should not exceed 10 to 15 seconds. So you can walk around a room, you can do this, but don't stretch that time too far, or you might see people being like, what is on Instagram again? It's we deal in the browser, in the internet, with people that are trained throughout the last 15 years to go down to an attention span of 1 second. Asking them to walk 10 seconds is very struggling to a lot of people as we browse the internet. Yeah.
So I mean, then there's a question in the chat, but do you take like walks in the forest with your team, or do you like observe, like, I mean, I guess you may do a lot of observation to kind of like bring back those magical moments in a way?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say it. Actually, they even work with employee interviews. It's very de-escalating. It's very nice, and there's some, excuse me, there's some kind of visual. I once met with a friend that I haven't met for quite a while inside one of our worlds, and we were hanging out at the beach. And what you know normally when you sit with a friend at the beach is that you look very far. You look at the ocean, and it changes the topic, similar on a rooftop over the city. You basically say, you remember when we first met? How long have we come together? Or you speak about, do you actually know what we want to become when we grow up? You speak about a different time scale as soon as your physical perceptive scale also changes. Time and space, they're somehow related. And we very often felt like that we had more promising visionary talks as soon as you go in the metaverse when you have long views. So it can be translated, and even in its core, maybe digitized, how we react to trained environments. And no one ever asked you or trained you on a beach to speak about the future. But we do that naturally, and we do the same in virtual worlds. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Then we have one last question, and we can, I think, end the talk after this question. So Marta is asking, could you please tell us if you design digital experiences with a link to the physical world? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I do believe it's necessary. So think of it as a homepage that you go to somewhere in the NFT space, metaverse, you know, all those things. And you open this homepage, and what you see is a twisting world of galaxies. It looks like a black hole that you enter, and you have all those sensations flying by. Well, that's not the metaverse. That's a normal generative design. Or it's just a funky Web 3.0 Gen Z artwork. It's not a metaverse. So people expect the wildest things in the internet, and to give it to them is not necessarily a nice sensation. It's another nice artwork that, if you like wildness and unexpected twisted in visuals, is nice. What I do believe is you need that link, and you need to have a character that is grounded on the floor. That's a physical condition. And if you have a room, you basically build it walls in the internet, but that wall is not there in the internet to block you from going in. It has a door, so you walk inside a topic, and that is necessary. So you walk topics, not spaces. And when you are standing, it is only necessary that you stand, that we can ensure that we know that after 30 seconds there will be a little pop-up saying boom, and now you fly. But in order to sell you that you can fly, and to motivate you and have that that narrational, dramaturgical twist in your story, we need to ground you. If you directly fly, it's just wild. Yeah.
Interesting. No, this is, yeah, I like this idea of door to a topic. And thank you very much for your time today and for joining us this afternoon, Christian. I really appreciate it. And
thank you so much, Alexia.
Good luck with all the world you're building.
Thank you so much. Means a lot. Enjoy your day, everyone. Ciao.
Bye. Thank you
Ciao.
so much. Okay, great, everyone. This is actually almost the end of the talk. We have one more conference with Appia Studio, Sabrina Calvo, Marie Domanger, and two of our first year students, Enola Viri and Salome Khan. And they will be sharing actually a project that just finished, I think it was in March. And we will talk about virtual production processes and also about things that can rot in the metaverse and trash in the metaverse. So come back in 15 minutes and we'll start at 4 p.m. Thank you so much. See you later. Hi, everyone. Hi, Antoine. Hi, Marie. Hi, Sabrina. How are you?
Salut, Alexia. Hello. Nice to see you.
Good to see you again.
Yes.
So, yeah, let's start the last talk of this afternoon. So let's just do a summary of what we've been doing. This beginning of this afternoon, Nicolas Nova gave us a talk about the history of the metaverses and the recurring promises of the metaverses. And then we talked with Danielle, Brathwaite-Shirley, and Keiken about how artists and designers create virtual worlds and how they approach those new narratives. Then we had a talk from Christian Loclair about really think about production and how to actually construct those worlds. And I thought it would be a great thing to finish our conference this afternoon with you and the project that we finished in March. Feels like a long time ago, but it was end of March or April, I forgot. But yeah, so the idea is more to do like a discussion and to for like 20 minutes, half an hour on virtual production and the experience of the workshop we did. But I will present everyone. Hi, Sabrina Calvo. You are a game designer, fashion designer, writer, poet, and you've been teaching in media design for a few years now. And yeah, I don't know how many, but a few years. And you also teach in the fashion department here at Head Genève. Marie Domanger, who is a 3D, 10 years. Yeah, thanks, Nicolas, 10 years. And then, hi, Marie Domanger, you are a 3D artist and art director based between Berlin and Stockholm at the moment. And you've been teaching, in media design for already, I think, 3 years, no? Yeah, been teaching cinema 4D and art direction to our students. And Antoine Vaxeler, you are here to represent Appia Studio, a virtual production studio based in Europe. And we are also with Enola Viri and Salome Khan, who are first-year students here in media design. Great. So I have a little thing. I wanted to show just some pictures while we talk. But I guess my first question, I thought maybe Antoine, could you give us a brief definition of what is virtual production? What is it actually?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. And thanks a lot, Alexia, for organizing this and having us participate. So virtual production, virtual production is a way of producing video content, essentially. Yeah? So this is a task that we've been doing since cinema was created, essentially, and they've been trying to find ways to produce quality images, of course, often either replicating reality or changing reality and starting to make set designs that we don't find in the so-called real world or what we see every day. And so virtual production is really the latest technological advancements in that regard. What it consists of, it's a really large space, completely blacked out, yeah? In which there's an enormous LED screen, as you can see on some of these images. And on that LED screen, we can place any digital content. When I say digital content, I don't mean an image or a video. I mean digital content like video games created in Unreal Engine. So virtual worlds that we can navigate through into the screen within that studio. Yeah? So it's a sort of a digital world within a physical space. And that allows, essentially, many movies that you've seen most probably, from The Mandalorian to the latest Batman. Most of the images that you see at the end are actually produced in spaces like these ones. First, for practical reasons, it's easier, quicker, and cheaper. But then, more interestingly, for creative reasons. Yeah? It kind of unlocks many creative things for directors, DOPs, and writers. So essentially, we did this very short but really successful workshop with some of the students where they all created a world. We placed it on the screen, and then they became the actors and the directors behind the camera and started producing, again, video content. That's really the main objective.
Great, thank you, Antoine. And then I thought, Sabrina, could you maybe tell us a bit more about what actually you wanted to explore with the students? Now, I know we talked a lot about things that rot in the metaverse and trash and try to create world that are not so pristine. So I thought it would be great if you could tell us more about this.
Well, it's all about finding kind of like what the imagination of the materiality of virtual spaces are. So it's like trying to gather poetical material from these words are creating through some kind of like cognitive dissonance, because it implies what it's there and what's here. And the question of relationship is never fully asked. And so the design critique that we're trying to do is to try to question this relationship with it, you know, like just kind of like we are bringing all these things to virtuality. What can we take out of it? Which is at the same time somatics, at the same time extract from digital content, gathering matter and gathering weight and excrement, I would say, and dirtiness and moss and decay and blood and whatever you want. So it's kind of like, it's like experimental research because the thing that is really interesting in this setup is this, like, it's still a screen, it's still something that you project on, like with layered and multi-level layers. So it's one way of looking at alternate realities. So trying to break the boundaries in that kind of like setup is so interesting on, you know, on a poetic level. So we have to engage with that actively. I don't think that the metaverse, the way that the media and people are talking about it right now, have the same concerns as we had on that, but maybe the questioning of this relationship might offer a view about how we can relate sensuously also to virtuality, so that we can actually learn not to forget bodies, but, you know, bring back something like in gestures and in presence and like in a dance. Yeah, it was Laurie Anderson who said the virtual worlds will only get interesting when they produce their own rot. That is not programmed, but that is just like there. So it's already there when you look at the way people interact and the decay of social interactions or lag of or bugs or accidents in the systems or critical design, whatever, you know, but it's still when we will see that level of organic organization from within. So that's where we can explore and try to extract poetically right now, because that's the tool we have.
And continuing on what Sabrina is talking about, like, what was your experience, Marie, on this process? You know, because you're a 3D designer, you work mostly with cinema 4D, but you also think a lot about those, I'd say, virtual images in your work, and trying to find new texture, new colors. And so, what was your? Could you tell me a little bit about what did you think of the possibility of using visual production, and what was your experience throughout the workshop?
Yeah, I think obviously for me it was also very new, everything what we were doing this time, also compared to the previous workshops that we've done, specifically because I think this whole topic of space and virtuality was so different this time, because we had this whole other level with having not only something within the screen that we create, but also having the experience and the connection between the actual space, the reality, and what happens on the screen. And I think that was at the same time really interesting to explore, not only for me, but also for the students, of course. But I think it was also very challenging at the same time, because it's just much more complex when it comes to the workflow, but I think it also is much more complex when it comes to the way we think about this and the way we think about the connection between the screen and what's happening in front of the screen, because it's not so much about making, you know, a certain animation or a film or an image, and you create something and it's beautiful and you render it and it's done. But really, I think what just became more and more clear throughout the process of the workshop was that the actual process only begins once you've created something, and then you put it into the space, into the virtual production, and then you start filming that. And I think that was something that also for the students was a little bit confusing at the beginning, for all of us, I guess. But I think after a while, we managed to get a better understanding, and also then get a better understanding of what we can actually do with this, and how this is also really such an upgrade somehow from just creating something within the 3D space and the 3D software. I think that was really great. And I think one thing also that Sabina was mentioning or referring to was this kind of interaction that you have. I think just because of the characteristics of the screen, for example, you know, you have the light and you have the pixels that the screen is made of. And I think that is something that is just so interesting to explore, how the light works with the body, how the pixels react when you film, when you get closer to the screen or you're more far away. You have this moiré effect sometimes. I think all of those things, also just exploring that and being really experimental about it, and also not being afraid of doing something that might be wrong in the classic virtual production, like the moiré, for example. Abia also said in the beginning that's something you would always try to avoid, because it's not perfect and you have to have this blurriness. But I think those were specifically things that we tried to use to also design and create. And I think that was where, that was the point where it gets really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe it would be good to start introducing some of the projects that actually the students done. We are here with Salome and Enola. And I think the first project here is Salome's project that you've done with Dorota as well. Could you maybe tell us a bit about what is it, and what was your concept and idea? I'm just going to flick through the images.
Okay. So with Dorota, we worked together on building this virtual world. And at first we had ideas about aesthetics, but we didn't know what we were going to do. And we did some 3D scans with the phone. We worked in Geneva, and we stopped in many flower shops, and we were like, oh, okay, let's build an afterworld for dead flowers. So the idea is that we wanted to build a world with kind of altars looking 3Ds. And it's the idea that a real flower falls and dies in the physical world, and we see it after in the digital afterworld. So it was all this idea of magnifying this depth of a single flower. So we have for a project, we didn't have a lot of real elements. Actually, what we like to do is to use the pixels of the screen, and to also like have the real elements to be like one flower, dead flowers, and like fog, and play with lighting in the studio. So yeah.
So this is like what we see right now. It's like one of the flower shop that you were talking about.
Yeah, so we modified a lot of 3D scans before putting them in the world. So with like painting on textures and things like this.
And then can you tell a bit more about the narrative part of the project? Because you also have to, put your digital world on the screen, but there's also something happening in front of the screen. So what was happening in front of the screen?
So in front of the screen, we had the first scene with a real flower, like a tulip hanging in front of it. And we made a glow in the screen, but was like fading and like representing the depth of the flower. So the glow was like really slow, and then it starts to fade. And then we had another scene where the flower falls, and we see it join the other dead flowers in the studio, in the physical world. And then mostly we had fog, but mostly it happens in the screen where we see the same flower being taken up in the physical world, and we see it on the altar also being put in this world.
It's true that I forgot to mention that we are still working on the montage or the editing of all the videos. That's why we only have pictures at the moment, but I think you can get an idea of what Salome and Dorota wanted to explore here. And then Enola, I have a few pictures also. I thought maybe it is a completely different world, completely different story. Could you maybe tell us about like what you wanted to explore with Clément on this project?
Yes, it's true. It's totally different. We choose with Clément to explore, to create a desertic world with some buildings who move, something a little bit strange. We think really at the Escher draws. Yes, he draws to create our building. It's something where we walk and we are a little bit lost, and we don't know where is the floor, where's the sky, and we walk in the desert to be a little bit lost.
And then what was it? So there was a main character, like a personage in front of the screen. What was he doing? Was he interacting with the screen in front of him, or?
He's the actor. It's the main character, and the other one. It's here we walk in the world, and we see the building move, and it's him who is lost, and with the rush we want to create something like this, and explain that that we can be a little bit lost. It's true that when we at the beginning we want something more, with more and more, and in the fact we did something more with a little bit less of building, but it's cool.
And I thought maybe Antoine, could you maybe tell us a bit more about how, like, in which ways do you think virtual production right now is kind of changing the usual creative process of making a movie?
Yeah, I'll answer in a second, but I'm really happy to see all these pictures.
Yeah, good.
I had forgotten, and actually I think I'm glad we are not seeing the final rush, but we are seeing this behind the scene, because virtual production in the whole trendy discussion on the metaverse and all of that, I quite like seeing these studio images, because it's really the moment the two collapse with all its problems and with all the uncanniness that we have when we need to actually deal with these virtual worlds. And in the studio, during the 3 days we spent there with the students, we could see it. It's not easy. It's very difficult, essentially. It's difficult in the sense that we don't really know, the scale is weird, and we're like, I don't know, I'm not sure I like it, etc. It's really only once it's looked through the camera with all the ingenuity of the technicians that we get the beautiful image that everybody's looking for. Then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, that's amazing, I get it. You know? But until then, it's really walking in darkness. Yeah, it's really, I don't know. And this, we see it with our biggest clients. We have a huge budget and everything. That feeling that I'm trying to describe is the same on every shoot. Meaning that relationship we have with digital worlds or metaverse or however we call them, in a way is so much in its infancy, at least within virtual productions, that it's really fascinating to participate in it. Now, how is it changing image making? I think, I don't know if it's changing image making or the process of image making. Honestly, I'm far from an expert. The only thing I can see is what our clients experience when they come. And it's as simple as allowing them to shoot things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to shoot. Like it's actually that simple. There is no theory that without that technology, they just don't shoot it. Yeah, they look for another story or another thing because they simply don't have the budget. So I think in our case, and it's really just our case, the amazing thing is that the digital world and the capacity we have in our office to produce, thanks to Unreal Engine, ultra realistic environments in really just a few days, it's that reduction of time with that increase in quality that is really the game changer that we are witnessing today. Because it's been decades that we have armies of VFX artists in Hollywood able to do anything you want. From Toy Story to today, they can do anything you want, but with insane budget and really long times. What we are really seeing today is the ultra democratization of softwares like Unreal Engine, which are freely accessible for all of us to use, and with really amazing results. You know, so in our case, it's really there that there's a massive change from what we used to know 5 years ago.
Actually, Alexia, can I also ask a question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just wondering, also because obviously I wasn't there the last week of the actual production. Very sad. And so, yeah, I didn't really know what was going on in the studio. It's also really nice for me to see the pictures now. But I was wondering for you, like Apia or Antoine, what would you say? Because I know this experience must have been very different from you compared to like your usual work or your commercial projects when you work with clients at the studio. So I was wondering, what would you say, like in which way was it different, and what might have also been some sort of like advantage maybe with these projects? Because I felt that there's also a lot of good things in the fact that the students didn't really know how it works, and they were going like very naively into the space, and I thought that was great, but I was just wondering how that experience was for you guys.
No, you're right. It's exactly what you just said. I mean, there's nothing more joyful than to have zero risk, essentially. Like clients are risk adverse. So whenever they come into a project, they're just there to make sure that we reach objective, but in order to reach objective, they lower the ambition often. Yeah. So along the way, students have the exact opposite thing. They come with really quite ambitious projects, and we love that because then we get challenged on the technical side, which is what we try to do, is nothing else than help our clients or students to achieve what they want to achieve. So in that case, it was really enriching for us because suddenly we had to think of things that we were never asked to do before. Yeah, but then they do, at some point, they do meet paths with, let's say, more traditional commercial clients where there is always a desire to experiment something. Yeah, sometimes the experiment is far more complex with students and academic projects, but in the end, the desire is the same. Yeah, so there's a lot of similarities, but of course we went much wilder. You can see it on the images than what we usually do. The worlds were more complex, the narratives were more complex, the camera shots they were much more open to suggestions from us, etc. Whereas our clients come with a very prescribed storyboard that we are really just there to respect. So no, an extremely enriching thing, which is I think what we discussed when we did the workshop, it's essential for such new technologies to have an input from the academic research side, because otherwise very quickly you get stuck. So no, fundamental. Really hope we can do this again.
I also too. I don't know if the audience has a question, but feel free to ask any question in the chat. We have a few minutes left, but Sabrina, I wanted to ask you, like, if you could tell us a bit more about how you approach the question of the body in front of the screen. Because I don't know if you remember when you did your first talk, when you arrived for the workshop, you talked about like going into the screen. And I thought it could be interesting if you could just tell us a bit more about that. And then I have like a final question for everyone.
Well, it's all about poetry, really. It's not a big deal. It's just that the tools that we have right now to explore the potentials of the sensual element of virtuality relies in concepts, words, and ways of putting them together to create like symbolic realities that can sustain the very similitude that we need to immerse ourselves in ideas. So it's basically trying to manifest ideas in objects, like bodies or textures. Some of the students use like plexiglass structures to actually see and reflect as prisms the virtual landscape. And then you have like, so you have the person perceived, then you have like the lens, then you have like the virtual world, then you have like the captation of the whole thing. So on every layers of the step, you have opportunities to create depth and matter through language, through images, surface, the aesthetics, and the depth of the surface, actually. And that's what we explore in poetry. I'm using poetry. I know it's a big word. It's like, oh my God, Sabrina always talking about poetry and everything. What I'm talking about is the practice of learning the texture and the body of what we call the metaverse, but that is just like the basic aesthetics data that is available to us to relate to some kind of alternate realities that bears some kind of like veracity, that we can believe in with our mind. And so we are working with the mind right now, and the mind is sustained by art and by the purity of lines and the way we vectorize things and the way we can order things, even chaos, especially chaos when it's not bound by traditional laws of gravity or, it's all kind of like, it's like a cognitive experience, because building realities is about sharing hallucinations somehow and finding the tools and the words and meanings so that we can all share it and say, okay, so you're saying this reality has this name, or this thing is particular is named that way. So we can all share it and believe it on a mind level. And we create these structural virtual concepts and constructs between ourselves, So the body itself is a vehicle for that. It's a receptacle. It's been explored by some of the students, and some of them prefer like to rely on the view or the gestures, but the body as a surface has already been explored like visually enough. I think what we need now is to experience the displays and the setup that virtual XR are allowing us to, so that we can bring back the somatics, so that we can bring back like new ways of relating to our bodies here and accept their fluidity, because that's the fluidity that we have in virtuality that we are craving for, in mid-space.
And on that, because it's already the end of the talk, it goes so fast. Sorry, I opened the windows of my office because it was so hot, and then they just started the construction. Apologize. But I have a not simple question, but more like, I was curious to know, like, what will be your wish? Like, what type of stories do you think are needed in the virtual world? This is more like a question for all of you. Like, what do you think? What would you wish you will see in the metaverse or in the virtual world, in terms of stories or narratives? It could be anything. It could be something simple, tiny, or big, like dreams or whatever.
Such a small question.
No, I don't know. I was just, it's more as a curiosity to kind of like wrap up the day. Like, what do you think? Like, are there some stories that we are not telling that we should be telling, or the things that you wish you would be experiencing? But if there's no answer, there's no answer as well. It's okay.
I think, like, on my part, I think that what I really like in this virtual worlds and future worlds is that we can find things we can relate to, like things we know, things we have in the real world and things we can like have back on these virtual spaces.
Okay.
Yeah, if I have two things I'd love to do in a virtual production studio. One is a theater play with an audience inside the studio watching it, using the screen and all the technology. And with actually a specific story, which I have in mind for the past 10 years of my life, that I never found the way I could do it, but actually virtual production is the way, which is, yeah, it's not important the story, but I think that would be a fantastic project. And the other one is as simple as bringing that tool to education. I'm a teacher myself of architecture in London, and of course, there's tons of online classes that are really effective, but I think there is yet a new format to invent where virtual production can really participate. So I'd love to do that, essentially creating online classes from a virtual production studio.
I was actually just thinking also when Antoine was mentioning the theater, I think what could be great, because also, you know, coming out of this whole lockdown period with COVID and not being able to go anywhere. And I think it was so nice how a lot of new ways came up of interacting and also being part of something when it comes to, like, for example, concerts or, you know, anything like that. And I think that would actually be really interesting to explore, is something like a format, like a concert, for example, where you can actually play with this very old format of visuals, of like stage visuals, but at the same time also being able to film that for a much bigger audience that's happening outside of the concert, for example. I think that could be really interesting. Yeah.
Great.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't expect anything anymore. Honestly, there are like, I think the only thing we can do right now that would be really fun is try to mess with it, like destroy it, like methodically, you know, so that we can get rid of this thing once for good, and so that it's like bound into our brain like that.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's a massive damage to our to the survival of our species, I would say. So I don't know if it's like expecting. I mean, I'm expecting students. The only thing that I'm expecting is students to mess with it and just say, you know, like, let's keep it as a metaphysical tool to question things, but not, you know, let's not build a reality that where we're experiencing death and hunger and starving and all these things there, and not, you know, blend them, because they are like two different things that are completely ruled by different laws. Mm-hmm. And that's our responsibility, you know, as teachers and artists.
Well, I think that's a beautiful way actually to end this talk, but also to end the afternoon. Yeah, and I think it's nice also to finish with Salome's flower. I'm going to put them back here. Yeah. Thank you so much, Marie, Antoine, and Sabrina, Enola, and Salome for sharing this experience we had together a few months ago, and that I hope we'll do again, because it was such a wonderful workshop. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you for everyone that helped me and media design to make this day happen. And yeah, until our next Distortion series next year. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.